The Castlefield Corridor between Deansgate, Manchester Oxford Road and Manchester Piccadilly is one of the most congested rail corridors outside of London. The two-track section between Oxford Road and Piccadilly not only has to handle local, regional and long-distance passenger services, but also freight services to and from the Trafford Container Hub located to the southwest of the city centre. The section between Oxford Road and Piccadilly is currently used by around 10 passenger trains per hour in each direction. In addition, there are 2 services per hour which head west towards Liverpool and Southport, which originate from the west-facing bay platform at Manchester Oxford Road. There are also around 2 pass per hour in each direction for scheduled freight services. In May 2018, an attempt was made to increase the number of services using this section to 15 trains per hour, after the completion of Ordsall Cord and key parts of the North West electrification programme. However, the May 2018 timetable change ended in failure, not just in Manchester but across the UK. This was due to the late delivery of key infrastructure enhancements, an over-optimistic assumption of what the infrastructure could reliably accommodate, and other systemic planning failures. There were plans to transform the corridor between 2009 and 2020 that would have seen the city's 3 main stations connected for the first time with up to 4 trains per hour between Piccadilly and Manchester Victoria via Oxford Road and Ordsall Cord, which was completed in 2017. However, in order to provide 4 trains per hour, there were further plans to increase the number of tracks between Oxford Road and Piccadilly from 2 to 4, and build 2 new through platforms at Piccadilly. In addition, Oxford Road Station was to be remodelled. Unfortunately, in the end, only Ordsall Cord and remodelling of Manchester Victoria was delivered, and the plans to 4-track Oxford Road to Piccadilly were ultimately scrapped after initially being paused. If the full funding for what was called Northern Hub was provided, as promised, then Castlefield would have been 4-track by now, and Piccadilly platforms 15 and 16 would have been delivered, so we probably wouldn't have been talking about it today. Instead, Ordsall Cord is now only being used by 1 train per hour in each direction, which is rather embarrassing given its £85 million price tag, and we're still left with a major bottleneck which not only limits the number of services but also means that reliability on the section is compromised. Now though, it appears as if plans are finally being drawn up that will improve reliability, and it is claimed will also increase capacity. Now I feel I should be a bit careful with what I say, but it does seem that on the face of it that the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, has suggested that the recently proposed interventions will have the same effect as the full Northern Hub scheme. The £300 million figure Burnham seems to have referenced is the estimated cost to build a new freight terminal that would allow Freightliner to move from Trafford Park to a new location outside of the city. And the £1 billion figure was for the full delivery of Northern Hub. So make of that what you will. But it does seem to me that there has been a concerted effort recently to draw a line under discussions about Castlefield, and to sell other, smaller interventions as delivering the same benefits as the Northern Hub. The specific plans Andy Burnham is talking about is the proposal to move Freightliner's terminal from its current location and move it approximately 20 kilometres to the west, to a site on the boundary between Warrington and St Helens. The plans for the new freight terminal are being developed by Tritax Big Box, who already seem to be in advanced talks. However, due to commercial sensitivities, it has not yet been confirmed if Freightliner wants to move to the proposed location, located next to Junction 22 on the M6. But if the freight operator did move, then it would free up land for the proposed regeneration of Trafford, which would be developed alongside plans for the new stadium for Manchester United. It is argued that moving the terminal will free up capacity on the Castlefield Corridor by removing up to 20 freight services per day from the route. Whilst it's true to say that moving freight from the city would free up some capacity and improve reliability, it's not clear just how much capacity would actually be freed up, especially as the plans do not seem to include closing the second, smaller freight terminal, which is situated next to the current Freightliner site. So some freight trains will still have to use the Castlefield Corridor. It could also be argued that this simply moves the problem, with freight trains routed along the Liverpool and Manchester line, meaning freight services would have to use Earlstown and Winwick junctions to head south on the West Coast Main Line. But the section of the West Coast Main Line between Wigan and Warrington Bank Quay is itself constrained. So I think serious questions should be asked about whether a thorough study has or will be conducted to establish what impact freight trains using Winwick Junction will have on capacity and reliability on the West Coast Main Line and Chat Moss Line. This is also important for Greater Manchester, as it also impacts the route for the 1 train per hour service that would call at the proposed new £32 million Golborne station, which is suggested will form part of Burnham's B network plans. There are also new plans being developed to remodel Manchester Oxford Road, which Network Rail argues will simplify the layout and improve reliability. I was hoping to talk in more detail about that in this video, but I will have to save that for a separate video I think. The plans for the new freight terminal and remodelling of Oxford Road do have the potential to increase capacity and improve reliability through Manchester, so I am broadly supportive. But I still have reservations about the proposals, and question whether or not even both interventions combined can in any way be compared to four-tracking the Castlefield Corridor and new platforms at Piccadilly. It should also be noted that neither intervention addresses the serious overcrowding on Piccadilly platforms 13 and 14. The island platform seems woefully inadequate for the number of passengers using it, and seemingly has to be staffed at all times just so that passengers can safely board and alight trains. So, whilst any plans which aim to alleviate the problems with Castlefield Corridor should be welcomed, I would urge caution and question whether or not any comparison should be drawn with the Northern Hub. Surely, Northern leaders should be pushing for as much investment as possible, not suggesting that a £300 million freight terminal will have the same impact as a £1 billion package of measures that would have transformed rail travel across Manchester and beyond.